What's up guys, Lucky Locks here, welcome back to another video, and this is going to be some predictions for Dana White's Contender Series 2021 Week 4. Should be some fun fights on this card here, and without further ado, let's get right into the action. So the first fight on the card is between Jacob Rosales and Victor Martinez, and this is going to be a lightweight bout. So Rosales has quite a few fights under his belt for only 26 years old, and he has faced some pretty decent competition too. One of his first losses back in 2015 was Tommy Aaron, who's a pretty solid fighter affiliated with Tony Ferguson now. Rosales won 4 fights after that and then was defeated by UFC fighter Justin James in 2017. He picked up a win over Joshua Jones on Bellator. That was the first of 4 straight wins as well. And then he beat, Ricardo Seixas on LFA during that span as well. That's a pretty good win. The streak was ended by Jonathan Pierce, a UFC fighter that we'll be seeing soon. And after that, he also beat Team Alpha Male fighter Suleiman Ahmadyar on LFA, who was 7-1 at the time. He then lost to Bryce Logan, who is now a Bellator fighter, on LFA, and that was a 5-round title fight for the 155-pound belt. And he won his most recent fight, that was also on LFA, and that was against Jose Martinez. So he is undefeated against guys named Martinez. I'm just throwing that out there. Rosales is a BJJ black belt. He's a durable guy. There are some defensive deficiencies in the striking, but overall I feel like he's a pretty well-rounded fighter, and I do like what I've seen from him so far. Victor Martinez is currently on a 6-fight win streak, including a win over Manny Muro, who we most recently saw on Bellator. Martinez had 2 round 1 knockouts in his last 2 fights, but he has not been in the cage since 2019, so a little bit of a layoff coming into this fight. His losses were Luke Flores and Eric Gonzalez. Both of those guys are pretty solid fighters, so no major cause for concern there. He was most recently on Kombache and Fury FC, where he was the lightweight champ, so pretty decent competition level. I don't think it's quite as good as Rosales, but definitely pretty decent. Martinez was scheduled to fight Tucker Lutz on Dana White's Contender Series last year. So this isn't his first time, kind of on the UFC radar. I don't see him having much grappling success with Rosales. He definitely should try to keep this one standing, in my opinion. But I'm going to slightly lean towards Rosales here. I like his well-roundedness. I like the grappling advantage that I believe he's going to have. I like his activity. He's been in the cage, this year. And I also really like his strength of schedule up to this point. So I am going to slightly lean towards Jacob Rosales, the slight favorite in this one. Next up, we will be breaking down a flyweight bout, and this is going to be between Kleydson Rodrigues and Santo Curatolo. Rodrigues is a 24-year-old prospect out of Brazil who is 6-1 overall and currently riding a 5-fight win streak. He will be taller and most likely longer here. I'm not sure what the number is in Curatolo's reach, because they don't normally list those on Cage Fury, which is where he has fought, most of his professional career. Rodrigues has an 83% finish rate, hasn't fought since 2019, so another guy coming off a bit of a layoff here. He was the flyweight champ in Jungle Fight in Brazil, and he was supposed to be fighting Cage Warriors champion Jake Hadley in this spot, but now draws Santo Curatolo as a replacement, and both are tough fights. Santo Curatolo steps in on short notice, not crazy short notice, but short notice nonetheless. I was pretty devastated that his CFFC fight with Fumi Nakuda was scrapped for this, because I was really looking forward to that fight, but I am definitely happy to see him get his shot at a UFC contract. Nakuda is the current champ in CFFC, and I think he should definitely get a chance as well sometime in the future, because he is very legit as well. But Curatolo started his CFFC career out with 4 round 1 finishes. Next fight, he wins the 125-pound belt with, you got it, another round 1 finish. It was a KO, and in his first title defense, he was defeated by Alberto Trujillo. He got caught and knocked out in round 2. I would probably still pick Curatolo if they ran that one back, though. I do think that he's the better fighter. It just was not his day. Respect to Trujillo for getting it done. And Nakuda ended up taking the belt back from Trujillo in his first defense, so most recently Curatolo found himself in the second round for the second time in his pro career and scored a knockout which earned him another title shot, but now he is here on Contender Series instead of there. And Curatolo obviously has a ton of power. He has decent wrestling and grappling. He's just really strong at 125 pounds since he is a shorter guy. He's able to pack on that muscle, and he is very muscular, very powerful, very aggressive fighter, and just really powerful for 125 pounds. It's very difficult to stand with him. So I actually think You know what? I like Curatolo at the dog money in this one. There's a lot of unknowns surrounding Rodrigues, and I know that Curatolo is going to come out hard looking for a finish. Very strongly considering betting this, but I don't think I'm going to force a play here. If I had to bet this fight, I would probably look to back Curatolo as the dog. So we are moving on up to the featherweight division for our next bout between Steven Nguyen and Theo Rlayang. And Nguyen is a Fortis MMA product with a 7-1 record. He had a 5-0 amateur career. He won 11 straight fights pro-am combined, then got his first taste of adversity when he lost to Alan Cruz on a flying knee on Dana White's Contender Series in 2019. So he is making his second appearance on the show now. So the UFC likes him, that's for sure. They called him back here, and after the setback, he comes right back with a 30-second knockout on LFA. So Nguyen has an 86% finish rate with 3 knockouts and 3 submissions, has KO power, more of a striker than a grappler, but he can pull out some moves in a pinch and wrap up a submission, as he's shown us in the past. Rlayang, on the other hand, is an undefeated prospect. He had a 6-1 amateur career, turned pro last year, and already has 5 fights. That's pretty good. He has an 80% finish rate, hasn't been fighting the best competition though. 4 out of his 5 opponents have had losing records. The combined record of all of his opponents is 14-25, so he hasn't really had that tough test yet, and I think Nguyen is definitely going to be that guy. That doesn't mean that Rlayang can't pass the test, but he's definitely going to have to take it, and I don't think that Nguyen's going to make it easy, that's for sure. Rlayang is going to be the smaller guy here. He does have some good kicks, pretty solid standing. It wouldn't hurt him to try to get this fight down. But yeah, I like Nguyen here. Both of these guys like to finish early. Similar game plan out of the gate, and I think that Nguyen is just better at it. He trains at a better gym. He's going to have the size advantage. I believe he has the experience advantage, face better competition, and just has more experience in general. And I just think he's a better fighter, so I did bet on Steven Nguyen here, actually, at minus 190. I like him in this spot, and I do think that he'll get the job done here. Next up on the card, we have a welterweight bout between Michael Morales and Nikolay Veretinnikov. This is an interesting matchup right here. Morales is an undefeated Ecuadorian prospect, a 91% finish rate with an 11-0 record, so it's all very impressive. It wasn't really against the strongest competition, combined opponent records of 28-22, so, you know, not terrible, but not great. But he is only 21, so I'm still really impressed. I actually think Morales is an extremely legitimate prospect, but 21 is sometimes just too young for the next level in MMA. He also has never really faced that much adversity. He's a slick striker, has some pretty good feints. You can tell this kid came up training, part of that new generation where they aren't just training in one discipline. They are getting the full MMA experience much earlier than most MMA fighters would have in the old days. And the kid is very good. I think we'll definitely see him in the big show one day, no doubt about it. Veretinnikov, on the other hand, I've broke him down before on LFA. He's training out of Texas by way of Kazakhstan. He has a 9-3 record, but went 1-3 in his first 4 pro fights, so he hasn't lost in 7 years now. He's riding an 8-fight win streak with a 78% finish rate, 7 knockouts. Really well-rounded guy, good striking attack. You know, pretty solid wrestling too. He hits really hard, has some nice low kicks. Patient but clinical striker. He just beat Anthony Ivy, former UFC fighter, by knockout. Has a nice win over Steve Jones on LFA. Has a win over Charlie Ontiveros, who had a UFC fight before. And one thing I'll say about Veretinnikov is he's definitely not built like a 21-year-old. You know, you can tell that he's a grown man, and that's not to take away anything from Morales. He's in great shape too, but there are just undeniable differences between the physical attributes of a 21-year-old and you know, a full-grown man. So I'm going to go with Veretinnikov here. He's good. He's never really wowed me that much, but I think that his veteran savvy can get the job done against Michael Morales. I think Michael Morales might honestly be the better, you know, prospect overall, as he is so good at a young age, but I think that Veretinnikov is going to have his number this time. I think Morales, you know, if he does lose this one, will come back bigger, faster, stronger, and better in the future. I definitely, you know, like I said, think that we will see Morales in a major promotion eventually, maybe even soon. I don't know if Tuesday night is going to be the night for that. So I'm going to go with Veretinnikov here, but definitely acknowledge the fact that Morales is very good and could show up and show everyone that he is the real deal. But for now, I'm going to stick with Veretinnikov, but I'm not confident enough to lay down any money on him in this spot. So that's going to bring us up to the main event, and this is going to be a middleweight bout between Hashem ARKHAGA and AJ Dobson. This should be a really good fight. ARKHAGA got off to a 4-0 start on the Jordanian regional scene way back when, and then after that he didn't fight again for almost 7 years. Returns in 2019 and fought again in 2020. So he won both of those, obviously. He's undefeated, and that brings him to 6-0 overall. Not the greatest strength of schedule ever, but his last 2 fights came on Brave and UAE Warriors, respectively, so pretty decent. I want to say he has a 100% finish rate. A couple of his older fights don't have a method of victory listed on Tapology, but, it seems like a whole lot of KOs. He definitely has some power in his hands. The knockout over Jeremy Smith on Brave was something absolutely serious. And apparently, no ring rust after the long layoff, I guess, but it was a 35-second fight, so hard to tell. He doesn't look, just to the eye test, extremely powerful, but he is accurate, calculated, and firm shots that, obviously carry a lot of power behind them. He has good footwork and movement, good patience. You can tell he's a high IQ fighter at this level. I believe that he is a jiu-jitsu black belt. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure he's a black belt, but I was watching one of his fights, and the ring announcer obviously was speaking in Arabic, and she said something and then said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I'm thinking that she said he's a black belt there. I honestly don't know, so don't take my word for it, but I do believe he is a good grappler. His cardio was probably the number one red flag for me here, not necessarily because it's bad or because I think it's bad, but just because it's a bit of an unknown. Definitely doesn't look to be in the same kind of physical shape as AJ Dobson, so I'm thinking, is that going to benefit him by not having to carry around so much muscle mass, maybe an easier weight cut, etc., or is there going to be a big gap in athleticism and physicality that benefits Dobson here? So the cardio, I feel like if that comes into play, Dobson might be, the more physically fit, the more explosive later into the fight, but it's hard to tell, with both guys finishing fights so early. Dobson comes in here with a 5-0 record, 5-1 amateur career. He has a bunch of round 1 knockouts with an 80% finish rate. He is a good striker, kind of a plotter, comes forward and backs you up, has a little push kick that he utilizes to keep the distance, really good hand speed. That right cross comes really quickly. Seeing a little bit of wrestling from him, that could maybe be an X factor in this fight, but obviously ARKHAGA has that grappling in his back pocket. I have no idea really what ARKHAGA looks like in the wrestling department, aside from maybe some top control that I saw him get as a result of a knockdown. So I'm not going to say that Dobson necessarily has an advantage there. I will say that I believe Dobson will be the more athletic and physical fighter, though. I definitely would give ARKHAGA the grappling advantage, like I said. But I think I'm going to lean towards Dobson as the dog in this one, honestly. Both fighters have a very similar style. I think fight doesn't go to decision is probably the safest play here, but I doubt that pays very well considering the total is set at 1.5. Dobson has been more consistently active over his career, hasn't had any big layoffs. I'm going to lean slightly towards the dog in a close matchup with a lot of unknowns. I don't see myself having any betting exposure on this one because it could be really tight. We didn't see ARKHAGA for almost 7 years. Then he comes back, has 2 really quick fights that it's kind of hard to get anything from. So it's just a tough one to call. Dobson, I have seen more from him. And, it's a close fight. And I feel like if you do want to bet this one, I would probably lean towards the dog. But like I said, I am not going to be betting this one personally. So that's going to do it for my Dana White's Contender Series Week 4 predictions, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to everyone that subscribes, likes, comments, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it.